long do people attempt a FSBO before they list? Sometimes it's a month, 2 months, 45 days. So you see, there's already a correlation between we know they want to sell, they know they'll pay a commission, and they actually go on the market anywhere between 0 and 14 days. FSBO, we know they want to sell, don't know if they want to pay a commission, and we see the corresponding time frame could be 60 days or less. And then those like circle prospecting, we know that's a 6-month to 12-month process.
All right, folks, I got a good one for you today. It's going to be a really, not that the rest of them aren't good, the rest of them are great. This is a really great one in this case. You have the great Greag Harrelson. And if you're anyone that has done, online lead conversion, Google pay-per-click, Real Geeks, that's how I originally found out about Greag. I just knew he was killing it with Google PPC. Then back in the day, the original like Facebook ad posting tool that Real Geeks, came to fame from, doing a great job. And I said, hey, so this Greag guy must know a thing or two about lead conversion. And so I kept following him on Facebook and on the socials. And, lo and behold, he's done even better over the last decade. So, surprise, surprise, right? So I've been following Greag for a while, and he has a really great Facebook group. You guys should all join. I'll drop a link in the comments called Real Estate Sales Solutions. And, Greag just takes off the gloves and goes all out in this group. And it's been a great source of, insight and knowledge. And, Greag, welcome to the group today. Thanks for sharing your time with us, because I think, you're not only good at this whole lead real estate game, conversion game, not just good at that, but you have something that I don't see a lot in this space, which is kind of thought leadership, right? I don't see many people talking about taking a step back and saying, hey, this is where we are. This is what we do as sales professionals. And this is why some of us are really good at this. And this is why a lot of you guys aren't very good at this, right? And it's not what you expect. So I love being surprised when people talk about lead generation and lead conversion. That's what I want to talk about today, Greag. Your analysis of that, your taking a step back and looking at the meta problem, because I think we're lacking a lot of that in the industry. There's a lot of how-tos, there's a lot of tactics, right? And it's rarer for people to do a little bit more strategy on what it is we do as real estate agents, what it is that we should be really, really good at. So that's me setting the table. Greag, want to do a quick intro for folks that, maybe that wasn't good enough to us. Did I miss anything? Who you are and what do you do nowadays?
Yeah, well, hey, I do appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to a very good conversation here. So, yeah, I'm Greag Harrelson. I've been in the business for maybe 27 years. I'm located in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That's my hometown. But I have real estate teams and offices throughout South Carolina. So I'm in 5 different markets and 9 offices in the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. And my business model is based on coaching real estate agents on how to, become mega listing agents, buyer conversion, online lead conversion, and whatnot. So whether it be providing leads, providing the tools necessary to run a business, or coaching people on how to build their business, that's kind of what I do inside of my company. It's kind of one of the differentiators, I would say, amongst my companies and teams versus my competition.
Yeah, I love that. And so much so, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not. I think you even buy companies. You buy
Sure.
real estate teams, real estate companies with the idea of making them more productive
Yeah.
because of what you just talked about. You've kind of, I don't know if this is fair to say, you kind of cracked the code on how to make a kind of average real estate agent a little bit above average real estate agent. So
Yeah.
much so that from what you're putting online, you're kind of flipping, you're buying and rehabbing these real estate teams. I don't know if that's fair to say, where you take
Yeah.
them and you like brush them up and make them more productive. Is that what you're doing nowadays
Yeah,
too?
it's a great analogy. I'll find somebody, they don't have to be struggling. I'll find somebody maybe wanting to exit. Maybe they're just not profitable. And I go in and I troubleshoot. So, and for the most part, most companies and teams, even though the teams will probably kind of deny this, but most companies would accept this. And that is, they really don't have solid coaching, and they have to outsource their coaching, and then they also don't have faith in their team to be able to convert. So they're not willing to go and invest too heavily in lead flow because they know it's all going to fall out the bottom of the boat. They're not going to make an ROI. And so I feel like I do have a lot of those things in grasp, and I can bring that to an operation. And so yes, lately over the last 5 years, I have been acquiring companies, and that's kind of how I've expanded throughout the Carolinas.
I love that. So here's my first question, Greg. So because
Yeah.
I think you're uniquely, qualified to answer this. Why are most teams and companies not profitable? You've gotten to look at under the hood on a lot of different scenarios, not
Yeah.
just your own, but other people. And I think a lot of people struggle with this when the market's good and the market's bad. When the market's good, it's easy to hide. It's very easy to hide when you're not really profitable or not very profitable. When the market gets tough, like it's been the last 6, 12, 18 months, I think, like Warren Buffett said, the tide came in and we saw who was kind of swimming naked.
That's right.
Why are a lot of companies, a lot of teams not profitable or not as profitable as the owners would like to think?
Yeah, I'm going to oversimplify the answer and then we can expand on it. But I would say there's a lack of accountability in teams and companies, leadership. They're afraid to hold agents accountable. And the reason why in my opinion, the reason why they're afraid to hold them accountable is because they already know that other companies are recruiting them and trying to recruit them away, and they're offering sexy splits. So you've got team leaders and you've got owners of companies that are they're so afraid of the agent right now because the agent can just like at any minute, oh, I can go over here. So the agents have leveraged the offerings that they're getting from outside recruiters to actually squeeze the owners and the leaders and make it very hard to make a margin, hard to make it a profit. And so the leader and the owners, like they're so like their margins are so small that they can't afford to actually have the agent leave. So what do? They're just always like, hey, whatever you would like to do, sure, you don't have to do this. So there's no accountability. And so if there's not going to be accountability, then the likely to get a return off of coaching or a return off of leads is going to be unlikely. So now there's no accountability. That leads to there's no value that leaders are going to be able to offer the agents anymore because it's too risky. There's no margin in it. And so
Gotcha. Gotcha.
leaders, if people that are listening that are in more of a leadership role, if you want to build a team, in my opinion, you need to find people that are looking to grow and will give you permission to hold them accountable. If you have that, and that's how you start a relationship, then you can take the risk to go in and add more value and know it'll pay off in ROI.
I love that because you're actually describing kind of a vicious cycle. It's like
Yes.
I don't want my people to leave, so I don't want to force them to do anything they don't want to do. I'm going to make as little money as possible so that they don't leave, and then you become exactly a place that's very leavable. Because what are you actually doing for them?
Brokers and leaders are scared to death of agents
Got it.
leaving. And because they're scared to death of an agent leaving, in other words, they're attached, then they're compromising. And it's actually everyone's losing.
Got
Everyone's
it.
losing.
I got you. I got you. Well, didn't expect that. That's a really interesting answer to that because I thought you might have said it's the leads or it's the
No, you
tools
won't hear me
or it's
saying that.
the
I
wrong
would.
CRM or
No, no,
it's the
no.
wrong
You
dial.
won't
I
hear
think
me
that's a
saying any of that. No, I don't even
yeah.
need a damn CRM. Give me any leads in a yellow notepad and we're going to convert. We don't need any of that stuff.
So actually, I saw a post from you the other day, Greg, where you made this exact point. Actually, right?
Yes.
You're kind of saying, actually, it's good enough. I want to actually bring it up. A conversation about leads, right? This whole what
Yes.
is a
Yeah.
lead, right? So, I mean, I'm kind of brushing up your memory. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's a huge value bomb. I did that. My mind at least went a little bit like that. One thing I've been telling a lot of the folks that we work with at Power ISA is that at the end of the day, it's about how many real estate focused conversations you can have on a daily basis.
Yeah.
All these shiny objects, all the dialers and the CRMs and the platforms and the Googles and the Facebooks and the White Lopos, all of that is almost orthogonal to that, right? It almost
Yeah.
has nothing to do with that because you don't need the tools to have the conversations. You don't really need to. There's a million ways to do it. But if you focus on that, so I think we're of the same mind here in a way. But I like how you explained it a lot better than I did. So Greg, what do agents get wrong about leads when we talk about this, concept of leads? What are the mistakes they make? I think you laid it out really, really well
Yeah,
there.
a few things. They're actually trying to figure out which lead source is better. Okay, which lead source converts better? And one of the things that I say is their lead sources don't convert. Okay, the lead sources are not converging. They're not converting. They're just somebody that's going to give you a name and a telephone number and an email address. There is no conversion mechanism in a lead source. Okay, so but we see in social media, hey, what's your best converting lead source? And then all of a sudden you see all these, you could go to say another Facebook page where there's 100,000 people on it, and there'll be 1,000 comments. And what I notice is there'll be comments about this source is terrible, and then later on there'll be a lot of comments about how that same source that someone else has said is terrible is actually great. And the reality is both can't be true. So I actually believe that none of it's true. It's not about the source, it's about who's working the source. And again, there's self-accountability right there. So we have to accept this, that no matter what your source is, I believe wholeheartedly that if you'll take your source and if you could actually go back for 3 years on your source, whatever the worst source you can think of, for 3 years, and it's going to convert probably at 10 to 12%.
And you threw out the number there. So Greg,
yeah, because it's a real number.
That is very rare that people put numbers in these conversations, because no
Yeah.
one wants to kind of be caught, like, oh, well, that's not realistic. That number is, I'll be honest with you,
challenge everybody to
triple.
challenge me. I know it's the number.
That's triple the number I would expect a leader to say, to be very honest with you. It's probably about triple what I expect most team leaders to go. So,
can I put that in context?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask. That's my question.
Yeah,
how did you arrive at that number? I'm very curious.
Because what I just said is 10 to 12% will convert. Now let's talk about, what do agents convert? See, there's a source that converts.
Yes.
That source is going to convert at 10 to 12% over that period of time. But when we look at the individual agent and say, what was your conversion rate? Then the best of the best in our industry, significantly above average, is going to be at 3%. Yeah. And then you'll have some that are at 6%. And some people that say they convert at 6% are telling the truth. Most of them are lying. But some are actually 5 to 6%. Some are telling the truth. Again, more are lying. The ones that are probably between 2 or 3, that's probably legit, but the average is less than 1. So now we know that the average agent is actually converting less than 1%. A good agent is between 2 to 3. And off the chart, amazing agent's going to be at 5. But the potential is 10 to 12. So you see how much is like not being captured.
100%.
That's how much is not being captured. And the reason we know this is that there's been enough time go by in online lead generation now that either people like myself that had audited, say, 50,000 leads, or companies that lead companies that I talk to who have done their internal auditing, they're all finding it's about 10 to 12% over a 3-year period of time. So, I mean, you could go to Bold Leads. I don't use Bold Leads. I used to use Bold Leads. They have a mechanism to tell you out of all the leads that you got, how many of them converted. And guess what? It'll be about 10%. You go to sold.com, it's going to be around 10%. You go and put your stuff in Fellow and you use that type of, and after a couple months, you have your whole database in there and you look and you see what percent is converting. It's going to be probably 13%. So, and I've done my own audits. And so across the board, that's what the potential is. The challenge is the real estate agent is not sticking around long enough. They're trying to they think a good lead is something that converts immediately. And that's where the problem is agents are judging quality based on time frame. At the same time, the online lead sources are catching the lead in their funnel earlier than ever. So you got the lead sources catching the lead at a dreaming phase and transferring that to an agent. The agent finds out that they're just dreaming and wants to ignore the lead because it's not going to convert anytime soon. But the dreamer becomes an explorer, and the explorer becomes a buyer. And so if we as the industry, we are ignoring our leads when they're in the dreaming phase. So the leads are ignoring us when they're in the buying phase.
100%. And I think it's even worse than that, Greg. I think these billion-dollar companies are getting very good at capturing these leads at that bottom phase and selling them back to us for 40% of the commission, right?
Yes.
I think those leads are adequately priced. I don't even think that's not a steal. That's not a deal for anyone, right? That's just kind of subsistence farming, if you will. But they're getting really good at that, and they have billions of dollars to get even better at that. So I think if you're not getting good or better at that dreaming phase conversation, on that dreaming phase, adding value to someone in that phase, I think you're going to end up working for these companies. I'm being a little bombastic there, but in a sense you will.
I got your point. I think it's I think it's a great point, and I think it's a worthy conversation for our industry to have. And the thing about like people that complain, because people complain about 40%, it's going to be 50%, everybody. It's going to be 50%.
What are you going to do?
And here's how I know it's going to be 50%. Because most agents are willing to pay 50% to not have to do lead generation activities themselves.
100%.
See, we don't need these leads. Just show up at 8 o'clock and prospect for 3 hours a day and generate your own leads. But you don't want to. So instead of having to invest our sweat, we have to invest our money. Now we're complaining about investing our money. Don't invest your money, go invest your sweat. But we're past that stage where no one's even teaching prospecting anymore. Very rare is that taught, because there's too much resistance. So let's just go ahead and sell leads to people. That's what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the ways this kind of became apparent, because it's been a journey for me, Greg. I didn't, took me a while to kind of arrive at this kind of just realization of what the industry is really about. One of the people that helped me was an agent out in Seattle, a client of Power ISA. He came from the car sales industry, actually, right? So he said he was kind of shocked. Again, when you know about sales and you go into real estate, it's very obvious. Most people are not from a sales background, and when they come to real estate, and you're kind of surprised by this. He goes, "I came into real estate," and I go, "Okay, great." He said, "Yes, where's my list?" And everyone was like, "List of what?" He goes, "Well, the people I'm going to call today. Like we're all on commission here, right? So I need a list. So how do I generate? Where'd you guys get my list?" I kept asking everyone where his list was. No one knew what he was talking about. No one had a list for him, right? He goes, "Okay, well, can I roll up his sleeves?" And started just building a list of people to call every day, because he said, "That's what we do. I'm not commission-only salesperson. I got to be talking to people every single day if I want to get paid in 30, 60, 90 days. So when he put it that way, I go, well, yeah. That's exactly, what we should be doing. In his old job, a list was given to him, right? He goes, "Hey, here's a list from when you were." It could have been from Craigslist or inbound leads or cold or 3-year-old leads. It didn't matter to him. He said, "I just want to have conversations with people. Maybe we'll connect, maybe we won't. And the people that I have a connection with, I'll just keep calling them until they buy." That was the car salesman mentality in the best possible way, right? Car salesman mentality goes, that's how the industry works, and that's how you make their money. And I saw him do it in real estate, right? So this is not someone kind of, coming up with an idea and not executing on it. I saw him execute on it. Top 3 agent in a 200 agent market center for Keller Williams. So I'm like, that mentality will make you unbelievably successful. But that's not the mentality I think that most real estate agents have, to their detriment, right? They don't have that. So Greg, you work with a lot of agents. I'm guessing you work with a lot of new agents. Mm-hmm. How do you get them from the where do I spend money to not lead generate into the how do I lead generate for a living because this is my job? Do you struggle with that with people that work in your different offices? How do you get people from one mentality into another?
Well, that's interesting. So just keep in mind that, okay, you said you work with a lot of new agents, and I do work with a lot of new agents. They don't have a mentality. Okay, so they don't have it's typically somebody that's been working for 5 years doing it a different way that you're having to break that habit and start a
Got
new
it.
habit. That's much more difficult. Okay.
Got it.
But so newer agents, they don't have a way. They don't have any habits. So they basically say, "Hey, what do I need to do?" You tell them what they need to do, and they do it. They're the easiest ones to get up and running. As a matter of fact, I got a new agent just the other day. He's 4 months into the business and he's got 10 listings right now. Already made sales, 10 listings. Oh, by the way,
Wow.
he just turned 19. The guy knows no better. Okay. He only knows one way. And so he's
That's
not,
awesome.
when I coach him, he's not battling with, well, that's not what they told me over there, or this is how we did it at my last
I
team or
never
whatever.
did that
None of
before.
that happens. So, it's one of the reasons I choose to go after newer agents is because it's easier to take raw clay and put it on a pottery wheel and build a nice, a nice a vase or piece of pottery versus you take a piece of pottery and you have to break it down into its raw state of clay, add water to it, get it back to clay, and then start all over. So, I think building a team and getting people to generate on a daily basis, it's easier to do that if you'll go after newer people.
I got it. I got it. And for, as you acquire offices and acquire teams, what do you
Yeah.
do with some of those, older dogs? Do you teach them new tricks? How do you approach that challenge?
Yeah, so good question. So what I'll do in that scenario is when I acquire somebody, I don't make a lot of changes too early. But what I'll do is I will introduce them to all of our coaching. Okay, so then inside of that coaching, I'm giving all kinds of information, not telling them that they have to do anything, not trying to change anybody, but I'll warm them up by just over delivering on resources and coaching. And then what'll happen is after 3 or 4 months, I'll start to observe certain people I'm piquing their curiosity. I'll pull them aside. I'll have conversations with them. I'll do some more focused coaching on their business. I will then get them to go from, let's just say they want to be a listing agent, from taking 5 listings in a year to taking 50 listings in a year. And guess what happens as soon as I do that? Everybody else in the company is calling me and saying, "Hey, Greg, how can I grow my business like they did? Can
God,
you help me?" So what I do is instead of trying to chase them and get them to do things, I secretly create examples, and then they're chasing me and for me to go ahead and give them the same information. So there's an
gotcha.
incubation process. You can't just come in like a bull in a china shop, say, "This is the new way we're doing it." I never do that. I actually just introduce myself. I see who starts to lean in a certain direction. I go have a very pinpointed conversation. I said, "I'd like to take you on and coach you for the next 6 months, see what we can do." I create a result that gets attention. And with that attention, they give me authority. And as the authority, I can then start telling them, "This is what I think you
I
need to do."
gotcha.
There's a
I
very
gotcha.
big, it takes time to make it done, to do it right.
I got you. Yeah, because that is, I mean, that's I think it's the only way it works, right? It's not a top-down approach. It's
No,
not with someone that might be more set in their ways. They're saying, "Oh, this works, this doesn't work." They might have all these decisions, all this, baggage for lack of a better term. But when they see the one thing agents are really good at, one thing we're amazing at is, hey, why is that guy doing better than me? I want what that guy has. We are amazing at that. We're not
yeah,
great at systems. We're not great at having some of these conversations. But what we are world class at is seeing, hey, that person is doing amazing, and I'm not.
yeah.
And there's a gap here. I want to fix that gap. And sometimes it takes the form of I want that tool, I want that dialer, I want that CRM, I want that. But sometimes it's, hey, he got advice from Greg,
I gain
and
trust by creating an example.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that's what
That's a
ends up
right way.
happening. That's what ends up happening. And then once
I
I've
love
created
that.
the example, then they want a sample.
I love it. Love it. Great, great. So, Greg, I want to circle us back to the Facebook group. There's another post that got my attention. In this kind of same vein of kind of drilling down and dissecting some of these lead sources. It was a prospecting post, right? Hierarchy of lead quality.
Oh yeah.
Hierarchy. Those are fighting words. Like, holy cow! I hadn't heard someone, talk about it that way with authority, kind of know what they're talking about. And I thought that was very, very, very educational, very illuminating. For the people that don't have it in front of them, you kind of laid out the different kinds of cold calling, different kind of prospecting,
Yeah.
and you didn't say which one was better or worse, right? You
Mhm.
had a very, I think, educational approach to it, saying, "Hey, this
Yeah.
is what it is." I mean, you recall that? Can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that? How you
Yeah.
laid that out? I think it was very, very clear.
Yeah, so like, some of the main sources, if you're prospecting for listings, is going to be expireds, FSBOs, and circle prospecting. Okay. Barring, I know, past clients, centers of influence, rent bows, divorce, probate, we can go all the way down the line. But if I just went for the top ones, or the most common ones. So I came up with what I call the hierarchy. And the hierarchy based on fastest and most likely highest probability of conversion. And I say expireds are number one. The reason why expireds are number one is because we know they want to sell. They were just on the market 10 hours ago. And we know they'll pay a commission. They will compensate an agent because there was a compensation offering within the MLS. Okay, so we know they want to sell and we know they'll pay a commission. Well, what do we know about a FSBO? Well, we know they want to sell, but we're not sure if they'll pay a commission. And what do we know about a circle prospect, a cold call? Well, we don't know if they want to sell and we don't know if they'll pay a commission. So there lies a hierarchy. Now, what we also know is if we look at expireds, when an expired hits the MLS, we know that that also gets relisted in a very short period of time, like within a week or 2 weeks. We look at FSBOs and we look at how long do people attempt a FSBO before they list. Sometimes it's a month. 2 months, 45 days. So you see, there's already a correlation between we know they want to sell, they know they'll pay a commission, and they actually go on the market anywhere between 0 and 14 days. FSBO, we know they want to sell, don't know if they want to pay a commission, and we see the corresponding time frame could be 60 days or less. And then those like circle prospecting, we know that's a 6-month to 12-month process. We also know that we know nothing about them. We don't know if they want to sell. We don't know if they actually will pay a commission. There's your hierarchy. Now, here's what happens. So some people say, well, then I'm just going to go after expireds. Expires are the most tough to convert. Why? Because it's at the top of the food chain. There's more agents going after them. They're more angry, and it requires your skill set to be better. It does not require much of a skill set to circle prospect and say, hey, I just want to let you know another property sold. And, usually when one sells, and a lot of times another one will actually sell pretty quickly. So I'm just kind of curious, when do you plan on moving? It's not that hard to do that. What's more difficult is, hey, I noticed your property expired today. And they're like, oh my God, you're the 10th agent to actually
Yeah.
give me a call. You see, this can be more confronting. Now, for
Yeah.
those of you that say, I'm not going to call expired because that's what they say, just let you know, my script would be 10? That's it? Gosh. Well, at least out of 5,000 agents, at least 10 people are working, today. That would be my immediate response. I'm not going to
Absolutely.
flinch or get afraid of that expired saying that crazy statement. It's not. I just throw back a crazy statement back to them, and all of a sudden they love me and they set an appointment. So that's the hierarchy. It's the fastest require the most skill.
Yeah.
The slowest require the least. So what ends up happening, most agents don't want to learn skills at that highest level. So they end up getting discouraged with the hierarchy, the highest the highest quality lead. And then they get impatient because the circle prospecting doesn't convert. So guess what they do? Nothing. They just go buy a
Yeah.
bunch of leads.
100%. 100%. And I think a prospecting, this caught my attention because I've been a firm believer, other than maybe your own personal database, your sphere of influence, other
Yeah.
than that, prospecting is the most scalable and profitable, like big P profitable way to build a business. I mean, nothing really comes close to that, right? Because it's all about just making an effort to start a conversation with folks that you don't know.
Yeah.
Online lead gen is kind of the same game, except like you said, you're paying for that. They're kind of being served up to you. Although I don't know what your thoughts on
It's the
this are,
same thing,
Greg,
really,
but
because a prospecting,
it's the same game.
online leads. Like, let's just say, I mean, in one of my Real Geek sites, I have like 200,000 leads. Okay, let's just say the database size is 200,000. Okay, and these are all people that have opted in and whatnot over years, just and whatnot. Well, that's just a list that we can call. That's what that is. It's a call list. The people that have opted in raise their hand at some point. And so there is a amount that I know 10 to 12% of them are going to convert. I know that.
Yeah, 100%.
So, it's if I actually was to cold call and I was to look over a period of time of, say, 3 years, it's probably about 10%. About 1 of 100 are going to actually convert over 3 years. Not that, see, that's different than, well, I called for the last month and I didn't have 10% conversion. That's not what I'm quoting.
100%.
I'm not trying to act like I'm quoting that.
Yeah, 100%. I think the phone book will, in most cities in the US, the phone book will convert 7% year over year. The
Thank you.
phone book
Thank
will.
you for
The
saying
phone
that.
book
It's
will,
better.
right?
I'll take it one
So
step
so
further.
so
Yeah.
10, 12 actually, if you look at it that way, 10, 12 is actually kind of conservative in most areas. In most areas, it's kind of conservative because if the phone book is 7%, it's even better. I have an even better one for you, Greg.
Yeah.
If it, let's say I saw your post recently, we might sell 5 million homes this year, just by gravity, right? And probably gonna in that range. So 5 million transactions. There's at least two adults that are party to every real estate transaction, right? About, let's say, at least two, usually about three or four, but at least two.
Yeah.
So 10 million adults will be party to a real estate transaction. And I'm going to be generous. Look at spouses, look at, partners, so 10 million, at least 10 million, really about 20 million adults will be very close party to a real estate transaction. That's fair to say, right? 20
Yeah.
million adults just this year. There's 200 million adults in the US. There's 200 million. Okay. So basically, 1 out of every 10 adults in the country will be partied directly signing the document, or a spouse, brother, neighbor of someone.
Yeah.
So your math is not only, I think it's actually on the
Listen,
low
we
end.
can go to the mall. We can go to Target and ask everybody that comes into Target. It's going to be 10%.
Yeah.
So if I could do one thing today for the audience, and that is this: please, before you reject what I'm saying, just sit with it for about 24 hours. Because if you'll sit with this, and like after 24 hours, if you want to reject me, but make a commitment not to reject what I'm saying for 24 hours. Digest it, absorb it. And once you do, you will start to see the tremendous opportunity there is in this industry. People who are doing 100 deals a year, because I train a lot of people that are doing 100 deals a year, and I know exactly the formula to get you to 100 deals in 3 years, from zero, new licensee to 100 deals in 3 years. 12,000 contacts year one, 8,000 contacts year two, 6,000 contacts year three. Year three, you'll do 100 deals. That's it. Period. End of story. Okay. Now, with that being said, if you will just sit back and just absorb what I'm saying, reject me after 24 hours, but refuse to reject it for 24 hours, you'll start to see the huge opportunity. Top producers are not winning more business. Top producers are losing less business. Period.
Interesting. And can you unpack that? What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, like, when we get an online lead and they say, "Oh, I was just curious," or especially the one like this, the one that like comes in off of a seller valuation. "Oh no, I didn't do that," or "I must have accidentally clicked something." And then all of a sudden the agent's like, "Oh my God, okay, oh no, okay, well, I'm sorry. Well, maybe, yeah, okay, well, if I can ever do anything for you," and then move. They get off the phone, right? That's the person. Okay, a top producer is going to hear that person. They say, "Oh, okay. Well, they're going to automatically think, wait, they accidentally click something? Wait, they put their name in here. So my name is GregHarrelson. So they actually had to click 13 times to put the name in there, and 10 more times, 23 times to put their name and their number, and then another 10 times. They had to accidentally click 33 times before they accidentally clicked submit. There's no such thing. A top producer is going to automatically know that's a smokescreen. That's not an objection, and it's not a condition. So a top producer is going to notice that's a smokescreen. And the way that you handle a smokescreen is you just hang out for a while. You don't need to handle it like it's an objection. You don't need to have to fight them or prove them wrong. Just say, "Oh, well, no worries. Well, while I got you on the phone, just hang out for another 15 seconds. And just like smoke, if somebody blows smoke into the air, 15 seconds, it dissipates. It's no longer there.
Got it.
Time removes the smoke, not skill. The skill in that scenario is time. So a top producer is going to know, just hang out. And all of a sudden, now the conversation gets more real.
Got it. Got it. But people are not, either they don't have the training or they don't have the patience or the skill to have a 20, 30 second of awkward, back and
Yes.
forth to get to the actual kind of meat
Get
of it.
past the smoke screen.
Yeah.
We don't talk in our industry. We don't coach enough about smoke screens. We always talk about objections and conditions. In most coaching books, that's what they talk about. I believe there's more loss in failure to identify smoke screens than the lack of ability to handle an objection.
I love that. I love the way you laid that out. So Greg. So I'm gonna jump over the 24 hours. I'm gonna say I think what you're saying is accurate. I think this is true. And I want to ask you a question, how you run your own personal team, because given that it's all about conversations, given that it's all about making those contacts, making those connections, given that that's true, you still make investments, though, right? You've bought these online leads. You teach your agents how to cold call. How do you, as a team leader, like put on your team leader hat, of one office? Let's talk about that. When you're making these decisions, why would you go with one platform over another? If at the end of the day you want something that can connect, can get conversations started, how do you wrap your head around that decision? Because you can't just say, everyone go to Walmart and go to Target and just stand at the door. That's not really going to be I mean, actually, maybe you would, but most agents will reject that out of hand. So, given that that's reality, how do you approach this problem? Because I found you through an online lead generation, lead source. How do you tackle that? And let's make it relevant to 2024. How would you tackle that right now if you were starting from scratch?
And we're talking about lead sources, right?
Lead sources, yeah. How do you approach
lead
it,
sources.
with that philosophy?
So I have a rule here. One of my rules is that no single lead source should ever represent more than 15% of your overall business. Okay, so you've got to be diversified. So I'm going to have multiple resources just from a diversification factor. I mean, right now there's new FCC rules that have been passed down, and I think within the last couple of months, and it's going to change the landscape of the way leads are distributed from some of these major portals. And so they're going to have to make pivots, and there's a high probability that the price is going to go up and the quantity is going to go down. So if you were working with a certain portal, and that represented 25 to or more or 15% or more of your business, and they have to change the game, that puts you in a very vulnerable position. So what I'm really doing is I'm focusing on what is, or no lead source can be over 15%. So then I've got to do a couple things. Number one, I've got to make sure that I have multiple lead sources. Number two, I got to make sure that my personal hand is controlling the faucet for at least 50% of the leads. So what that means is like a PPC would be something that I control. Okay. A organic, the way that I built my website, so I get organic leads and whatnot, that's something that I control. So I got to make sure 50% is controllable. And then the other 50% can actually be by lead sources, but no more than 15% per lead source. So I start there. There's a rule right there. So some people may remember Realtor.com actually started canceling everybody's subscriptions probably 5 or 6 years ago, and people were panicking because it represented sometimes 70% of their business, and they had a rebuilding of a whole year before they actually recouped. I don't want to be in that. Then I'm going to look at a balance between high paid and high cost and low cost leads. So say a Zillow might be a higher cost lead. Okay, yes. Some will argue that Zillow does convert a little bit better. Of course, I'm sure people are going to argue with that, but the reality is that it probably does. And so, I've got to factor in if the conversion is going to be a little bit better, then or if it's likely that I'm getting people at the bottom of the funnel, because the conversion won't be better, it's a time thing, right? So if the time to convert is going to be a little sooner, then you can pay a little bit more. Then you go and there's other leads, or people have talked about homes.com, which they're trying to make a big run right now through CoStar. But that homes.com has a bad rap, over the last couple of years of from agents saying it's not that best, but it was also very inexpensive. So I'm always looking at what's the blended average, not what's the lead cost of one source. What is my blended average amongst all sources? So if I have a zero cost on these organic, and I've got a $10 on a PPC, and you got a $200 on a Zillow, and you got a $20 on or $14 on homes.com, and then I can generate through a home value widget on my Real Geek site for $3, and then I average all that out, and I find out my blended average is $7.
Interesting.
And that's the number I'm playing with. They're all going to convert at 10 to 12% in 3 years. So now I'm playing with that lead cost. That's my expense, lead acquisition cost. And then my job is now, what's my return over 3 years? And I'm not considering the fact that we'll make multiple sales off of some of those leads. I'm not talking about lifetime value. I'm only talking about first transaction value over 3 years. But I'm focusing on a $7 or $6 number because I'm looking at a blended average.
I love it. Yeah, because it's almost like an investment manager approach, right? Like
I
someone
say
that
it's like I'm managing money.
I want some mid cap. I want some, small cap. I want some blue chips here because it's always good to have those blue chips.
That's right.
I love that. I hadn't heard that before. That's a really, really interesting approach because you are managing money. It happens to be your own money, but you are managing it, right? And you're optimizing for risk reduction, right?
Yes.
You're taking some intentional steps to go. I know Realtor.com might be amazing, but if I only rely on Realtor.com, I'm vulnerable. I'm successful, and I'm also vulnerable, which I think a lot of agents we can lose that. So, Greg, I know you only have a little bit of time. I'm going to leave you one last question. As an agent, I think right now it's a really interesting time right now to be in the business. It's a very interesting time because I put myself in the shoes of a solo agent, and I see all these things coming at us. I see, NAR class action lawsuits. I see artificial intelligence. Is it going to help us? Is it going to kill us? I see, like you said, FCC changing the game when it comes to lead attribution. You see all these changes. How do you, as a leader in your organization, how do you recommend your agents approach these challenges that are coming at them? Should they pay attention? Should they ignore it? Is it noise? Where do you fall on that spectrum? Because I'm sure a lot of people look to you for guidance on kind of these troubling times. Let's call it that. How do you answer that question?
Yeah, well, so I don't think people should ignore, but I also understand, and I coach my agents that we also don't not need to react. Okay, so let's not ignore, but let's also not overreact. And you got to understand that by the time we're getting the information, it's usually in the form of a lead in a news source, right? It's either like an inmin, or maybe it's somebody that's looking for clickbait on some website and blogs and whatnot. So by the time we get the information, it's not coming from NAR, and it's not coming from the attorney. It's coming from somebody who's interpreting that stuff, and then they're putting out a headline that's designed to actually get us to click. So we just got to understand that that's the way this works. And so, number one, it usually takes a lot longer for things to transpire and pan out. So when we first get the information and start freaking out, don't do that. Just, okay, understand it's going on, but don't let it distract you from actually following up with your leads and making your contacts every single day, 3 hours a day. Okay, that's just what you got to do. So my job as a leader is to get a little bit more deep into what's really going on, and then convey my interpretation to my team and my agents within my company. And that's what I do. And I give them the comfort of knowing, hey, I'll be the scout. I'll run out there and figure out what's going on here, and then bring back to you what I feel like you need to know at the moment. I don't want them to be out of knowing. I want them to know something, but most of this stuff is just geared around freaking us out. And so it's just like the major news networks. Unfortunately, that's where we are now. We're not about necessarily the quality of the news. It's a matter of like, how can we emotionally ignite some charge within the viewer. And if they do that powerfully enough, then we become very loyal to them. And so the best way to gain loyalty of an audience or a team is to make them fear the opposition. And that's what's going on with all this stuff. And so I just believe that things are going to work out. I'm not like naive, and I also believe things are going to change. But I do have faith that the way that things are going to change is going to be better for the consumer. And if it's better for the consumer, it's better for the real estate agent that's willing to adapt. It's not better for the real estate agent that feels like our commissions are threatened. Our commissions should be threatened. The majority of our agent population is not delivering any value. You got to understand, when we started on media, taking all these pictures of our jets and our Lamborghinis, when we're selling $200,000 houses, the consumers got this, they're not too happy about it. And so the consumer's voice is going to be heard. Our social media posts should be of value to the consumer. Not the only people that are seeing our post in front of our Lamborghinis is other real estate agents. The algorithm is serving it to other real estate agents. It's not serving it up to the consumer. So we're not getting anywhere on this. So those are some things that I think about. I mean, all I can do is like influence my little pod, right? My little tribe, my offices. I do my best I can to influence others. But I just don't think we should be overreacting. I think we should take it serious. There's a lot of change coming, in my opinion. But
and I like the way you frame it.
I want to leverage that change. I want to be the leader of the change, not the victim of it.
100%. And I like the way you framed it, because I think a lot of these changes, the changes that are coming, I actually think are going to be better for the consumer, quite frankly, right? Just speaking honestly, I look at it and I go, I think when you give consumers this kind of transparency, as you know, again, there's a lot of up in the air, but generally, if you give consumers more information, you give them more transparency, and you kind of put the onus on the agent to demonstrate value. I'm like, that's what we should be doing every day anyway, right? I think it's easy to hide behind an old way of doing things, an old model. But if the outcome is you got to really show them you're going to give them some value, I'm like, well, then what should we have been doing in the past, right? Isn't that what we should do in any case?
Yeah, in absence of that is one of the reasons why we're in the situation that we're in. And I always look at this. I took General Electric as an example one day, and I said, I'm sure General Electric or maybe Microsoft, I'm sure, or whoever started, selling computers in the early days, maybe IBM or whatnot, they probably sold those computers at like, $50,000 for the computer. And they had a certain amount of margin off of that 50,000. And then all of a sudden, some competitor came in, and now all of a sudden it forced them to sell it for 20,000, and then 10,000, 5,000. Now you can buy the darn computer for 500. And guess what? Those companies are still around.
Yes.
So if our margins were to go down, that doesn't mean we go out of business. It means we have to innovate. So if you look at General Electric, Microsoft, and all these companies that were once selling at higher margins when they had no competition, now they're selling at the lowest margins ever. But when has their companies been the most profitable? When have they had the most value? The most value when they actually are selling at the lowest margin. They just become extremely effective and efficient at it. So we're going to have to know how to leverage technology. We're going to know how to do this so we can actually having lower commission compression doesn't equal loss in income. It doesn't equal, but that's how we react. Oh my gosh, they're trying to take our buyer's agent commission away. Okay, that would be commission compression. So commission compression doesn't mean the elimination of income. It just means that maybe you make less per unit. Now you have to figure out how to do more units in the same amount of time.
Okay. Absolutely. I think that's a much more productive, constructive way to look at that, because that should be your focus in any case. And I think it doesn't change, actually. It doesn't change. It makes it more important. Like you said, when change comes, what's the phrase? I think it's from Deming, adaptation is optional, survival is not mandatory, right? Survival is not mandatory. So I think I agree with you,
Right.
Greg. I think change is coming. Greg, it's been a great conversation,
Yeah.
man. I love talking to folks that are kind of deep thinkers, really go through this. You've done a lot to help agents, not just in your offices, I think in the industry. Definitely today here in our group. I appreciate you. If people want to continue the conversation, they want to learn more about Greg, what you're doing, what you're up to, what tools do you use, what do you do on a daily
Yeah.
basis? What is the best way for folks to follow you?
I tell you what, you mentioned the Real Estate Sales Solutions Facebook page. Just follow us there. Follow me there. I do put out a lot of content. There's and I try to deliver my intention is to deliver value. It's not a bunch of BS content. That's just not what I do. You may think what I think is valuable. You may think it's BS, but I don't intentionally just put up stuff just to post it. But you could also just hook me or hook up with me on Facebook. Just message me if anybody has any questions,
Yeah.
anything maybe I can do. Just hit me up on a message, or
That's
that'd
what
be
I
perfect.
actually. That's what I
That's what
did.
you
I
do.
should message. I messaged, Greg. I know you're busy, so you're not going to respond in 5 minutes. But that's
Yeah.
exactly what I did. And you were open to having a conversation, so I always
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you so much, Greg.
You're welcome, man.